Amy loved her college years. Varsity basketball, student leadership, lifelong friendships. But life got busy, and over time, she drifted away from her alma mater. Then, an email changed everything. A student, just like she once was, needed advice. It wasn't a donation ask. It wasn't a long-term commitment. Just a chance to help. Amy answered, suggesting a call. It took minutes, but for Jacqueline, it meant everything. A real connection. The advancement team saw Amy was engaged. They reached out, not for a gift, but to thank her, to invite her back into the community. Amy realized how much she missed being part of this world. She joined a panel. She met students. She felt the impact she could have. And when the time came, giving back wasn't a question. It felt like the next step. This is the power of Protopia. Not another alumni engagement platform. Not another fundraising tool. A smarter way to engage alumni where they are, creating real connections that lead to real impact. See the ripple effect in action. Visit protopia.co today.
Hello, everybody, and welcome. Thank you so much for listening to Alumless for July 31st, 2026. This is the Engaging a Global Alumni Community Edition. I am Ryan Catherwood. I'm joined by CMAC founder and CEO Chris Marshall. Hey, what's going on, man?
How are you, man? Good to see you again. We saw a lot of each other this week. You're probably sick of me.
We did get a chance to hang out a little bit up at Dartmouth, which was great. But it's been a little while since we've done one of these, you know?
Live, especially. You're right. Yep.
So it's good to be back. July 31st already here, marching through the summer. Won't be long, and we'll be talking about back to school here. But on the show, we talk about alumni and constituent engagement strategies and education advancement. And we're live today, as Chris mentioned. So say hello in the comments on LinkedIn. And ask your questions too, both to myself or to Chris, or even better yet, our special guest today, Nicole Kempton. And if you're listening to us by podcast, we greatly appreciate you adding us to your feed. And we're absolutely grateful to the teams at Protopia, AlumniQ, Richmond Associates, and version2.ai by Givesy for being our Alumless presenting sponsors for season 4. So, Chris, great show today. I'm so glad to have Nicole on, and I miss her, you know, as part of our CMAC team, someone to knock ideas around all the time. She's been busy leading Imperial College London's alumni operation. So, I guess to get our conversation started, you know, in a leader's first year, big new alumni role, lots going on. When you watch someone step into a big role like this one, what do you think separates someone who gets their footing quickly versus maybe someone who might struggle in this type of scenario?
Yeah. Let me start with by saying I do miss Nicole's more regular presence with us in the CMAC world. We had a really cool moment where, and 3 of the 5 of us are now back in other roles, but you and I are remaining, right? But it was Nicole, then Patrick Auerbach, and Paul Clifford all left within a few months of each other. Back to, you know, I was about to say real roles, but maybe this is an unreal role. Who knows? But we do miss you guys.
We don't. What we do is not real. And you're right.
Real. You're right. It's true. Yeah. But we do miss them and the regular guys. But I'm so thrilled after, you know, her year in this role and what she brings to the equation. And generally speaking, to your question, you know, here's the 3 things I thought of right away. Those that go in with a 100-day plan or a 90-day, I've seen those 3 months or 100-day plans, very clear. Designed approach to what's going to happen in the first, you know, 3 months or so in the role. That's number 1 for me. Number 2 is that we are in listening mode in those first 3 months. There are places where you feel pressure to act right away. We're going to talk about that in a little bit here with Nicole. But you know, more listening and learning the culture, the history, traditions of the place, I think are really important. And then to start showing acts and get some early wins and showing that you can, you know, that the person who hired you and the people who you represent as stakeholders are going to see impact on the work you're doing. So I think those are the 3 that came to my mind right away, Ryan, when generally speaking about what I think separates the people that can take off in these roles versus ones that struggle.
Yeah, and I think what's equally interesting about this particular role for Nicole is that it's for a UK institution
Yeah.
as opposed
Yeah.
to her work back here at Duke University. She's been living in the UK for a while, but as you think about, Chris, the challenges associated with an alumni leader taking on a role in a different country,
Yeah.
what do you think might be generally and genuinely different about
Yeah.
stepping into
Again,
this type of role?
yeah. Again, generally speaking, I think there are some differences. You have great places, Imperial, Oxford, Cambridge, London School of Economics, go around the world. There's other places you can point to that there may be at different evolutionary stages, but generally speaking, most other schools, most institutions outside the U.S. aren't fully matured or at the evolutionary stage that many U.S. institutions are, especially if you're at where Nicole was prior to CMAC. She was with Duke University, one of the most highest functioning alumni programs in the country. So you move from that to any institution internationally, you see a difference in sort of evolutionary stages. Is the first one. The other one that I think is real here is that again, generally speaking, the affinity or connection that a graduate has, an alum of institution blank internationally, is not going to be as high as you find here in the U.S. Again, general speaking, there's not, that's not a sweeping statement there by any means. The other thing I'll share, and a couple other quick ones, our sports culture here in the U.S. and the affinity that people have for their athletic teams, very different internationally, although you do see it. And then the other one I have found is that the alumni engagement programs tend to be more in the lean away from the advancement function internationally than you find. If they have an alumni program, they tend to be more in a friend-raising, event planning category. Generally speaking, again, there's going to be exceptions to this. And that notion of an integrated advancement model is not as mature at most international places, is what I found.
Let's bring Nicole out. We'll
Yeah.
ask her about these concepts. Here she is. Hello, Nicole. How are you?
Hey, it's so nice to be back with you guys. And it's kind of funny to be on this side of the pod for me, rather than in the host chair. So, so good
Other
to be.
side of the pond and other side of the pod.
Yeah, yeah. I've really missed working with you guys a lot over the last year, and yeah, we got to find a way to fix that. But
Well, let's talk about what you've been up to. You took on the role leading alumni engagement at Imperial. I guess it was about a year ago, right? It was just after the 4th of July, if I remember correctly, last summer. So it's been almost exactly a year. Talk about what drew you to the role and, yeah, what made it the right move at the right time.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll tell a little bit of the origin story of this role, which, I think a number of factors sort of conspired to make this the right thing for me. One is that I was already living in the UK, so you all know that my family is sort of a dual British US family, and so we were sort of happily ensconced here in the UK and looking to stay. And I had the opportunity to meet our current vice president, Kristen Blanchfield, for lunch because we have a bunch of mutual friends and acquaintances in the US. And she had recently come over from Johns Hopkins, and we just really hit it off. We had a complete and total mind meld and talked for like 2.5 hours at lunch. And she was sort of telling me all the amazing things going on at Imperial. And kind of at the same time, I connected with Joe Gardner, who was actually a former guest on this podcast, who was in the interim director role. And I think just the more I heard about Imperial, the more I had to be a part of it. And it's just an institution that I think is on a really incredible trajectory and just genuinely one of the most exciting places to be today. And we're a STEM B institution. And what that means is we're STEM institution. We have engineering, natural sciences, medicine, and then we also have a business school. And we've been ranked now, we just were ranked number 2 in the world for the 3rd year in a row, which we're really proud of in the QS rankings. But I think it's kind of not just about Imperial being sort of at the top of its game. It's also about the mission of the institution, and that just really, really resonated with me. And Imperial's founding mission is to be useful, and it's not like nearly as like sexy or whatever as some of the other missions that that institutions have, but in many ways, Imperial was founded to be sort of like the technical school for the British Empire. And I've always described myself as a jobs to be done person. And so to find this place where like the actual founding mission is to be useful just felt very aligned for me.
Right. Yeah.
And I think most importantly, it's the Science for Humanity mission. So the university has this big strategy around science for humanity, and it's just an incredible opportunity to mobilize our alumni community around a really compelling cause. And we just have all these incredible alums out there doing things, tackling some of the biggest challenges that we face on this planet. And, when I talk to them about being practitioners for science for humanity, I can actually kind of see them sort of putting on their superhero capes in front of me. And that's just really cool. Like we play an advancement, such an important part in that mission of mobilizing people around science for humanity. And so it just hits on a number of different levels for me. And so, I'm really glad I made the move.
What does the alumni landscape look like at Imperial, Nicole, for those first few months in the seat? Like, what has this felt like over the last year?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question. And it's one that, I think when I came into the role, I think the team was already doing an amazing job with the resources that they have, right? Chris talked a little bit about the differences between the UK and the US. And I think a big difference is around level of resource allocated towards alumni engagement. It's certainly not a given that, that alumni engagement is part of the university strategy. So, and we're in a really healthy position at Imperial compared to a lot of other UK institutions. The last few years have been really tough on the UK higher ed sector, and just the financial model of UK universities is under a lot of pressure. And so a lot of institutions have made pretty drastic cuts just to survive in this climate. But I think, and yet, like this moment that we're in kind of demands that we not just hunker down and survive, and that we actually, that this is a moment where we sort of step up and we try to do more, and we, that we recognize that that alumni engagement at Imperial and at other places as well is not just a nice to have, it's a strategic imperative. And so I've been kind of trying to, in my first year, I think the mindset shift that I've been trying to make is exactly that, right? That, kind of building the market within the university for alumni engagement. And I'll give credit to my former Duke colleague, Hank Woods, when I was leading the Board of Trustees task force on activating the global alumni network. He said, well, what you're trying to do really is to take alumni engagement from being a department of the university to a function of the university. And I was like, yes, that is exactly that. And I've re-quoted Hank, oh God, I don't know, hundreds of times. I occasionally write him an email to say that I've quoted him yet again, but I think that's it, right? So it's kind of, we have this big alumni community doing amazing things. How can we get them, mobilize them, get them really connected to the university, and do cool stuff together?
Is the internal work that you're doing to build that support and consensus for the justification and validity of having an alumni program, is that the biggest gap you've seen in terms of what you expected coming in to what's reality been like? Or is there other things that you were off on when you thought about what your role was going to look like when you got there?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that's a big one. I mean, I don't know that I've necessarily been super surprised by anything, but I think that one thing that has been a big surprise is just the pace at which Imperial moves. I mean, it's just very fast for higher ed. We tend to sort of say that higher ed operates at a glacial pace, and that is certainly not the case at Imperial at all. And I think that, in terms of this building a market for alumni engagement, there's at a university at a high level, at a strategic, 30,000 foot level, the university very much totally bought in on alumni engagement, like super invested in making it work, and recognizes that alumni engagement is going to be fundamental to our campaign success. But I think it's like, as you kind of get out into the other parts of the university where that kind of strategic imperative piece dissipates a little bit. And so part of what I've been trying to do over the last year is kind of understand, like, where are the bright spots, where is the demand for alumni engagement, in particular volunteer engagement, because we all know that we need to scale volunteer engagement in order to be successful, right? And kind of build out from that. So yeah, that's kind of where I've been.
We mentioned a bunch of the other differences. Generally speaking, we have the evolutionary stage of where most programs are. We have an investment level. You mentioned how alumni connect back, but go to the alumni level, and how has your arrival and then the increase in the work you're doing to engage alumni been received by the alumni population? Are they looking for that kind of connection, or are they surprised by the fact that alma mater is coming to see them again, or how would you characterize it?
Yeah, no, I mean, so Imperial, we just did an alumni survey, which is, I think one of your questions that you sent to me ahead of this was like, what's one thing that you're proud of in the last year? And that's definitely on the list of getting that across the line. And one of the things that we've just gotten our raw results back, and one of the things that we've seen is that pride and loyalty are like off the charts high, right? And people are super, super, super proud of having gone to Imperial. They love to talk about Imperial. They recommend Imperial to people. And yet the connection to Imperial metric was lower than we'd like for it to be, right? But that to me is actually really good news, because connection is something that we can move. And it's a lot harder to move things like pride and loyalty for people who've already been through the institution, right?
Right.
So that's what I would call like our opportunity gap. And so I would say that people have been, I've been received so warmly from our alumni community. But that being said, we have a pretty active community to start out with. But I think a lot of our regional groups in particular, they're very well established. They've cared about alumni engagement for much longer than the institution has cared about alumni engagement. We have had alumni in Singapore for 100 years. The official group is 50 years old. The group in Hong Kong is 45 years old. The group in Malaysia is around 45 years old. So these are organizations that have been like functioning very well independently for a long period of time, and have a high degree of affiliation. It's just kind of now, how do we take that and have a more intentional connection with them,
Right.
And make sure that they know what's going on at the university today and how they can get involved and help. So
Yeah, it's much more advanced and mature than I would have expected. And I think it's a few other schools like it. I mean, I think of INSEAD, for example, in France, have a global network of alumni chapters working. As I mentioned earlier, Oxford, Cambridge, LSE, same. But I love that you landed it. You weren't the American coming in to save them. They already had a lot of good things in place at the end of the day.
No, not at all. And I think that it's creativity that comes from being in a lower resource environment, right? Because there's no way, and we can't have sort of an official board in all of these regions. Like we can't do it. We just don't have the capacity. And so I think it's working with these alumni organizations that have been operating independently is going to be really key. Has been really key, and will continue to be, because we have one person managing all of our global groups, right? Which is incredible. And shout out to Christine on my team for everything that she does to manage all those volunteers.
I know we got to do a break here in a second, but gratuitous plug. So this is for those that can see, I'm holding up the National Alumni Survey, which was done in the U.S. I don't think any international schools were in this. But one of the things you mentioned that's a similarity is that when we ask people to score or rate their experience as a student, their academic experience, off the charts high levels of pride. But then you ask them to rank their alumni experience, their current connection, they actually ranks way lower. So pretty parallel to what you just described. I'd be curious to see how close the data is aligned between Imperial and what these are 31 schools across the United States. But anyway, if you're interested in this, let us know.
Yeah, no, I mean, I would love to take on as a passion project bringing the National Alumni Survey to Europe, because
We'll make an international alumni survey.
It is a fantastic piece of research, and I use it all the time. So
careful what you wish for, Nicole. All right, we'll be right back with Nicole after a word from our sponsor.
One of the biggest challenges colleges face is keeping alumni connected after graduation. Events, reunions, fundraising, it's a lot to manage. And honestly, most schools are piecing it together with different tools that don't really talk to each other. That's why AlumniQ has built their all-in-one platform just for higher ed. It handles the everyday stuff: emails, giving, membership, directories, and it makes it all work together in one place. No more messy systems. And here's the cool part. If you've ever planned a reunion, you know how chaotic it can get. AlumniQ has something called Signature Events that takes the pain out of big milestones. Think smarter registration, built-in giving, real-time reporting, and even printing name tags on the fly. It's like having an extra teammate who never sleeps. So if your school is ready to simplify alumni engagement and actually strengthen connections, check out alumniq.com and request a demo.
All right. So, Nicole, Imperial is definitely one of the more international universities in the world, a huge share of folks coming from other places. How, and you mentioned limited resources, but yet having global networks around the world. What's really been working for you building community with that genuinely global alumni base?
yeah, I mean, I sort of alluded to it before, but global is in Imperial's DNA, right? So we've got alumni in, I think, over 200 countries, and about 40% of our alumni base resides outside of the UK. And we also have these 4 global hubs. So we have a hub in the US, we've got a hub in India, we have a hub in Ghana, and one in Singapore. And so the global hubs, this is a fairly new initiative. It's part of the Science for Humanity strategy. And it's mostly focused on kind of partnership building in those regions, but our alumni are really key to that, right? So that we're finding that our alumni are the door openers. They'll often have connections or be in positions in government in those regions, or in top universities or companies that we're looking to work with. And so that's been a really interesting way to get our alumni engaged in something that's like really important for the university to move forward. But I think more broadly, what I've been thinking about is just, we really have to level up our marketing and communications function, because we're not going to reach 270,000 alumni around the world through events on campus, or, through our global hubs, because our global hubs are only in 4 countries, right? So we have to really think about like personalized communication at scale. And that's kind of our next project on the horizon, is to think about, a lot of things that we talk about all the time, and that you guys talk about all the time on the podcast, but just how do we make sure that the alumni experience is relevant and personalized, even if that can't be in person. We've got a really exciting partnership on the horizon with our Lifelong Learning Institute. We're thinking about more things that are sort of region agnostic. And then I think the other piece is for our in-person activity globally, we've been thinking about how do we really connect that up with the university's strategic objectives. So one example is we do this global celebration series of events in the summer every year. And this year, my colleague Christine, who I talked about earlier, she decided to sort of offer up a small pot of money to to regional communities for these global celebration events. But in order to qualify for the funding, they had to do an event that was tied to our School of Convergent Science theme. So they had to talk about AI, sustainability, health and technology, or space security and telecom. So those are the 4 thematic areas. And I just thought that was like kind of brilliant because we ended up having sort of 30 some events all over the world. There were speakers, there were visits to labs, there were, expert panels in different areas, and academics participated. And it was just, it ended up kind of really raising awareness, I think, of the School of Convergent Science, and also was completely volunteer driven. And we did a lot of the coordination and organization, but the volunteers really took the lead, which was great.
It's a great lesson right there on aligning, event planning and event themes with priorities at the institution, whether they're campaign themes or they're just, general priorities. What you just described right there is a home run. It's really well done. Kudos. I know you mentioned a couple of these before, but I know also that you prepare for these meetings, and I want to make sure that we answer this question of you. What was been a surprise for you, good or bad, that you just couldn't anticipate? Anything else on the list for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think I guess I should have anticipated this. I was thinking about this question, but being in the director's seat or what we would call sort of the associate vice president seat in the U.S.
Right.
Like, yeah. It's really, it's a big transition. It's a huge transition. And especially when you're learning a new institution and you're kind of building your network from essentially zero. You have to get to know all the different parts of the advancement organization and all of the different parts of the university and the things that are different. And then there's all the stuff that's sort of been piling up for quote unquote when the new director arrives, right? Yeah. And for me, this also involved, adding a commute onto things, which I didn't have before. And I've got teenagers who still need to get to sports practices, and so it's been a big transition. I don't want to sort of underplay that. And I remember when my daughter started high school a couple of years ago, and in the first semester of 9th grade, she was like so tired at the end of the week, and she would just be in bed by like 9 or 9:30. But, and we were like, what's wrong with her? And I totally get it now, where you are exhausted at the end of the week. But I do want to really shout out to you guys, because I feel like there have been some episodes of Alumless recently where you've had sort of new leaders on the show, and in particular, like the episode with Jim Brochart, and the episode with Lindsay Valdine from Northwestern, and Shara Freeman-Hoeffel from UC San Diego. I felt so seen when I was listening to those episodes. And so suddenly I was like, man, am I the only one who's like dealing with this? And then I listened to those and I was like, no, this is
there's a therapy group out there for you.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Is there something that stands out, Nicole, in your first year that you've been particularly proud of, something you built or launched, or a shift that you have made there?
Yeah, I mean, Chris talked a little bit about the first 100 days. And for me, when I was thinking about my first 100 days, I was thinking mainly, what's my learning agenda? And I think that learning agenda is even broader when you're talking about being an American and coming primarily from an American. I went to University of Hong Kong as well, and I have worked in the UK for a couple of years as a consultant, but still, pretty much new into UK advancement, and so that learning agenda was a big one. And I'm kind of proud of the way that I've approached that, I think, and also I think very proud of the culture that we've built within both the senior leadership team in our advancement division and the alumni engagement team. So I was very privileged to start on the same day as my counterpart in development, Linda Hindmarsh. And Linda and I have really been in lockstep since day one. And I think on the senior leadership team, we just all decided like, we're just going to trust each other, and and we're just going to make that call. And it's really been the best team that I've been a part of in my entire career. It's we do not always agree, but we have that level of trust that kind of enables the back and forth that gets you places, and it's just a very healthy, lovely dynamic. And I think I've tried to build that on the alumni engagement team as well, and create that kind of psychological safety for a team that's been through a lot of change over the last few years, and and is doing a lot of excellent work, but in a very dynamic environment, right? And so I'm definitely proud of that. And we have so much in the pipeline that, ask me this question next year, and like, my goodness, my list is going to be, my list is going to be much longer. But we've been able to, like I said, start that process of learning more about our alumni community through things like the survey, and really building good relationships across advancement. We're very much an integrated advancement organization, and we do have some silos. I'm not going to pretend that it's perfect. It's not. We have what I would label as very well-intentioned silos. So nobody's kind of, hostile, but it just, silos develop when you're not, super vigilant about preventing them from developing. So, yeah.
I think there's an episode to be had there, Chris, around well-intentioned silos. I like that term.
I had one time to refer to them as silos of excellence.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Silos of excellence.
I know we're past time, Ryan. I know you're going to try to cut us off, but I want to ask this question in the open one here because it's a good one. If you don't mind, let's go a few minutes over. And if folks,
go ahead, yeah, man, absolutely.
Yeah. Thanks for permission. Which is the design thinking question. So you have official certification in this space. You have used this even with our firm. I know you used it in past institutions, but your strong design thinking background, where have you been able to put that to work at Imperial? And where have you learned to kind of back off and slow down a little bit because we're ready?
Yeah, I mean, fortunately, I work at a strong engineering institution that's all about design innovation. So I think I use it all the time. That I love this stuff, and I think the thing that I love about it is that it's incredibly democratic, and you can kind of leverage the wisdom of a group, and you find expertise where you least expected to find it. And I'll give you an example because I think it's a good one. We've been doing a lot of hiring over the last year in the division, and I did a session at our all staff where we had people work in teams to do a storyboard of the ideal onboarding experience. And so they actually did like comic strip style kind of game out the ideal onboarding experience. We know that that's so critical when you're hiring new people to their success. And it's really hard when there's a couple of people from the ops team kind of sitting in a room who've been at Imperial for forever, trying to figure out what do we do with the new people, right? And so they were really open to it. And it was so fun. I just looked around. I saw all these people like laughing and having a great time, and also doing really serious work at the same time. And so many great ideas came out of that session. And one in particular was that so we have 2 anchor days. We're a hybrid organization, Tuesday and Thursday. And we had people starting on a Monday, and we were like, hang on a minute. Why don't we have people start on an anchor day so that they're not like Captain Lonely Hearts sitting at their computer the first day? And so it's stuff like that. I just think it's awesome, and everybody should do it.
Good stuff.
Awesome. All right. Well, we are going to have some more conversation with Nicole in the bonus section of the show. But our next episode coming up in a couple of weeks should be a little bit different, but still good. Of course, Chris is going to be on vacation, and I am going to be interviewing Mark Longo, Andrew Chang, and Mario Peraza from Caltech. This is a great panel discussion we're going to have on their alumni engagement metrics journey. We'll be sharing some dashboards. We're going to talk about how they arrived at the current state of their metrics program, which they just wrote about in the Case Currents magazine. So a good episode coming up in a couple of weeks. For those of you who are watching us on LinkedIn, go ahead and subscribe to the podcast so you can hear that bonus section with all of our special guests. For those of you who are listening by podcast, we'll be right back after a message from our sponsors.
Looking for your next career move? Searching for exceptional talent? Richmond Associates is a global recruitment agency that supports inspiring careers in fundraising, alumni and community engagement, as well as admissions. They also support making a difference in meaningful sectors like education, arts, health and medical, as well as conservation. Working with you from their global offices in London, Sydney, and Singapore. Have a chat with your trusted advisors today at Richmond Associates. Do the greater good.
Hey, everybody, welcome back. We are chatting with Nicole Kempton, who is the Director of Alumni at Imperial College London. Good live session, Nicole. Thank you for that. And picking up the conversation about untapped opportunity at a place like Imperial, you alluded to a bunch of plans that you've got coming up, some collaborations that are forthcoming. But how are you thinking about untapped opportunity? You also mentioned volunteerism and scaling it, but how do you approach, the idea of building and creating at a place like Imperial?
Yeah, I mean, I think I kind of alluded to this a little bit earlier, which is this idea around having to build the market for alumni engagement across the institution. And I think one very big area where we have a huge opportunity is around student alumni engagement. And when I started, I would ask every single student that I came into contact with whether they had connected with alumni during their tenure as a student. And most had not, at least not in any kind of intentional way. And I think that's a big miss. We know that Gallup research from a few years ago talks about the importance of students having meaningful relationships with adults, ideally alumni, and developing those kind of informal mentoring opportunities. And we haven't been doing as much of that at Imperial as I think we could be, and so we're now looking to do more. And I think there's both a technology piece to that, but there's also this need to sort of like build the market for involving alumni in the student experience, right? And making sure that it's that we are showing the positive impact that can have on student outcomes, right? So I think that's a big piece, and then I think it's just mobilizing alumni around science for humanity more broadly and figuring out how do we actually tap into alumni expertise to help move some of those initiatives forward. I talked about the School of Convergent Science. We're building alumni affinity networks that are aligned to themes of the School of Convergent Science, and kind of trying to figure out like, okay, what do we do with these networks that will have a positive impact on the university? And whether it's careers or whether it's lifelong learning opportunities and tapping alumni as speakers. There's kind of a lot that we can be doing around our School of Convergent Science, around the university more broadly. And one place where that is doing it really well at Imperial is our Enterprise Lab, our entrepreneurship hub for students. They involve tons and tons of alumni in the student experience. Our business school also engages a lot of alumni volunteers because alumni are kind of more core to the business school operations than the rest of the university. So I think there's really some excellent bright spots that we can build off of and grow that student alumni engagement.
Do you have the institutional support for that, all the way up to a president who says it's worth investing time and resources in that kind of a effort?
Yeah, I mean, I would say yes, yes, on a philosophical level, but not necessarily in that super specific I think we will. And we do have at Imperial. There's been a big investment and an effort around the student experience, and I think that where I do see a lot of support is positioning this as an outgrowth of that student experience work. And so it's not me just coming in and saying,
Right.
like, we need to do student alumni engagement, right? It's more kind of leveraging the things that are already happening at the university and saying, like, hey, we can do even more here by involving alumni. And I think that there's a lot of support for that. And it's just kind of how do we go about actually doing it, and operationalizing it.
One of those ways is not flipping the script, but maybe equalizing the script to say it's going to help students with this, but it allow us to cultivate relationships with our top prospects to do these things. We want to have interaction with students, and that's going to be a selling point when we know we can more deeply engage those people who are going to be able to make significant gifts to the institution.
Exactly. And you're spot on in terms of the way to sort of couch that effort.
Yeah.
And, you have to kind of know who you're talking to, right? When
Exactly
you're
right. The audience support, right? Yeah.
Because part of that is because there's so many benefits to scaling up student alumni engagement, right? It's if you're talking to the careers people, it's positive career outcomes for students. It's, if you're talking to the student experience people, it's like, hey, these students are going to be more satisfied and they're going to feel a greater sense of belonging to the institution. If you're talking to the fundraising teams, it's about like, how can we put a really meaningful engagement opportunity in front of donors, and so it's kind of, I think it's one of those things that it's so good and so intuitive that it's hard to actually pinpoint one clear why. There are so many whys.
Agree.
Yeah.
When you move from philosophical to the practical, and we need an FTE, we need a budget, we need, these kind of things have to happen. And we need some of your time, by the way, leaders, to do this. That's where the argument, I think, needs to be on all fronts, frankly. You can touch on all.
Yeah. And such a good point, because, we know that technology plays a big part, but if you don't have, it takes people to implement technology. Right. And so I think that's where I know in our consulting work at CMAC, where you see a lot of a disconnect, and I think that's strategy is enabled by technology, but you need the people, you need the kind of strategic imperative behind it. Yeah.
Love the conversation. I want to talk about the first year in the role, with lots of hard choices coming your way, and the fact that there's probably constant prioritizing and reprioritizing happening. How have you, in terms of making up your mind and decisions about where you want to turn your resources, your time and energy towards with your staff, how has that gone? And tell us about that journey, I guess what I'm asking.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a hard thing, right? And your past couple of guests on Alumless who've been new leaders have talked about exactly this same thing. And especially when you're in listening mode and you're going around and you're kind of hearing what's possible, or what people, where people see the opportunities, and you just want to say yes to absolutely everything, right? Because it all sounds great. And I think ultimately, like, where I come down is this, which is, what are the things that are going to immediately move the needle for us as we go into the campaign. And I talked a little bit about that alumni survey that we just did, and that opportunity gap that we have. And I think one of the big things that we can do to address that opportunity gap is to scale volunteerism. And so that's really where I'm putting, a big focus. And the big lever to do that is around that student alumni engagement piece that we just talked about. That's a big one. Closer collaboration with our faculties and our departments, and stewarding those volunteers really, really well, right? So they have a great experience and they're kind of deepening their engagement with the institution, and then having this really great personalized marketing and communication strategy that allows us to, in a very crude way, move people through the marketing funnel, right? Acquiring and deepening engagement, and making sure that our events are really focused on that deepening engagement piece, right? And so, and then I think about the other stuff that is an enabler, like driving efficiencies using AI more effectively, or that continuous process improvement piece of it, which, I know a lot of people on my team are thinking about that all the time. How can I do this better, faster, in a more streamlined way? Now, you asked what I'm focused on, and when I look at that, and I just made that beautiful speech, and then I turn around and I look at how my organization is actually put together, and that's not necessarily aligned to what I just talked about, right? And we need more resource, we need more capacity. We do not have a volunteer engagement team. We have, one person, right? And we have, and so if we're going to have an impact, we need the capacity on the team to be able to do that. And so I think my task this year is like really making that argument effectively of like, this is, if we want to go here, this is what we need to get there, right?
The scalable volunteerism stuff is both an on-ramp and it's the opportunity for re-engagement over the course of a lifetime. And so, adjusting the thinking and the alignment and the resources to accommodate those opportunities, I think is important, but it does take time, as you said.
Yeah, absolutely. Building it all from not from scratch, but doing that big audit around the university, building all those workflows to start out with. It's a lot of work, and you need people to do it.
Was there anything that you went into the job, with your experience at Duke in various roles, again, at a pretty high functioning advancement organization, but you had a belief going in and then you experienced certain things at Imperial that your mind has been changed on? Anything come to mind in that category?
Well, I think there have been so many surprising things. I think the pace thing is really something that I didn't think that an institution could kind of operate at the pace that we operate at. In many ways, I'm humbled every day to to be kind of part of that. I think it's reinforced to me the importance of like seeking first to understand and then be understood, and to be really relentlessly constituent centric, not just with our alumni, but with the team and the people that we're serving across the university. The older that I get, the less I feel like I know, and that's quite exciting to me in some ways. But I think it just what I mean is just that it's so important to understand your context. I'll give you a small example, which I think is illustrative, which is that when I arrived, the team kind of was running me through what we do in a typical year. And one of the things is around these milestone pins. So our alumni get these packs with their milestone pin and some nice postcards and artwork of the university. And I was like, pins? Really? We're mailing people pins? Like, and I thought in the back of my head, like, this is going to be one of the first things that I kill off, right? Well, so I thought I'll be quiet about it for a while. And then I show up at my first alumni event in Boston, and immediately the first person to arrive is like decked out in pins, Imperial pins. And he's like, I love the milestone pins. He's like, I wear this every time I go to an event. I wear my pins. And I thought, maybe he's just one guy. And then person after person walks in with their pins. And I was like, okay, I'm wrong. This is really meaningful to people. And who knew, like, the pins, right?
So the milestones, like their graduation year, 10 years out, 20 years out?
Yeah,
kind of
exactly. Yeah. And so, it just, I think about that all the time, the pins.
That's a great
good example.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah. And I've got my own pins now. I have an Imperial lanyard that I'm starting to collect pins as well. So, it rubs off. It's like the flare that from the movie Office Space.
Yes.
Yeah. Niche
that.
reference.
I love that.
But a great one, yeah. Talk about, Nicole, your volunteer board and the structure of it, and maybe any shaping that you're trying to do with that organization over the next few years.
Start with
Well,
what you inherited, if you don't mind.
we do not have a volunteer board,
Okay.
and so
There you go.
that is I think, and that's one of those things where I am trying to take my direction from the Martin Dempsey. Martin Dempsey likes to the former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, who's a Duke alum. I've had the opportunity to hear him speak a number of times. He likes to quote John Wooden, controversial, being a Duke alum, quoting John Wooden, but there's a quote that of John Wooden's, "Be quick, but don't hurry." And I think that's one of the things I'm keeping in the back of my mind when it comes to the volunteer board, because when I came into the role, I was like, okay, we need a volunteer board. And I'm kind of trying to understand, um, you know, why we don't have one, and what are the possibilities if we get to do this from scratch, which I think we might. How do we want to form the group? We have this opportunity to not necessarily do things the way that they've always been done before, and I think there's a lot of alternative ways to think about how do we move people through a volunteer leadership journey. And so that's part of what we're thinking about as well. Um, and so I do miss having a kind of board that you can bounce ideas off of, and that you can kind of use as a bit of an informal focus group for things, test out strategic messages, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I do have alumni that I've kind of come to, that I've formed a relationship with, that I kind of come to on an informal basis with that sort of thing. So yeah, it's something I'm thinking about. We Imperial used to have what's called a court, which was sort of like an alumni board, but not quite. And the university decided to sunset that before I arrived. So yeah, so we are open to ideas at this point.
The quote you just shared reminded me of one I heard from Brian Sisko years ago. He's at NC State. Also a hard one to digest if you're a Duke alum, but his quote is, we need to move as fast as we can, but as slow as we must.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Smart.
Yeah, and I think about, at the moment, I don't have the resources to effectively staff a volunteer board, right?
Yeah.
So manage, yeah, exactly, and so maybe in the future, that's something we'll want to look at doing. But yeah.
Nor was it necessarily the best use of volunteer engagement resources, as opposed to sort of the scalable programs that you were describing earlier. Let's shift gears just a little bit, Nicole, and talk about giving and a culture of philanthropy at the institution. Curious, is there ongoing efforts to educate around generosity and philanthropy during the student years? And would you say that giving culture differs in the UK? What's kind of transferable there, either direction?
Yeah, so short answer is no. There's not a huge amount of education with students on philanthropy, but I do think that there is a level of awareness that philanthropy has made certain really amazing things at Imperial possible. And like we have the when you first arrive on the Albertopolis campus, there's a sign right there that says the Brommel Institute for Sustainable Aviation, and the one of the members of our campaign board is the lead donor on that. And that obviously, like, sustainable aviation is a hugely impactful area when we're talking about tackling the climate crisis. And there's a lot of people at Imperial working on sustainable aviation, and having that, that name of, a current living donor associated with that, I think makes an impact on people. But I do think that this is an area where there is a gap in the UK compared to the US, for sure. There's not that kind of automatic. I mean, you guys sort of talked about it a little bit in the lead up to the episode, or in the introductory part of the episode, where there's not necessarily that automatic connection, and we still have kind of a pretty transactional mindset, I would say, around like I went to Imperial. It's past tense. I went, I graduated, I moved on, and I think that when we shift that mindset to I'm part of the Imperial community for life, then that becomes something that people want to invest in. They want to see future. They want to see future Imperial students thrive and have the same opportunities that we do. But I think overall, we're really fortunate to have a cause like Science for Humanity. I mean, the National Alumni Surveys talks about this a lot, right? Where there's that big split between sort of under 45, age 45, and over age 45 in terms of, under age 45, not interested in the loyalty-based messaging or the nostalgia-based messaging of you should just give back just because, right?
Yeah.
And they want to contribute to a cause and to have an impact in the world. And we have that, right? We've got Science for Humanity. It's pretty freaking compelling. And so, when I think about the possibilities for engaging people as regular donors, as we call them in the UK, it's a slightly different terminology than an annual fund, but we've got this incredible cause, and we can really talk about in a very authentic way the impact that giving has on the world, right? And how giving through Imperial really impacts some of the thorniest challenges that we face as a global society.
The next question on our script here is something we've already talked about, so I'm going to throw you not a curveball here, an easy ball to hit here, but it's about. I'm curious about it because I mentioned in the opening about athletics being part of the culture that connects. You've been at Duke, phenomenal, pretty good football team, but not a bad basketball team either over here. The one team that you guys lost in the NCAA tournament back in 2009 to what was it, Lehigh University? Is that
yeah. Well, Chris, that was also on my bingo card for this episode.
Yeah,
so
I hit it.
yeah. I knew you were going to talk about that.
But is there any sport affiliation? Do they even have athletic teams in it? I don't even know the answer to that question. But and maybe a side question, separate question. But I'm really curious about World Cup fever across England. It must have been real, seeing how well they did. Give me both, if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. So we do have quite a lot of student sports, but it's more sort of what we would call in the US like intramural club sports. So yeah, but I mean, a lot of our students are active in sports, but it doesn't have the same. I mean, at Duke, it's kind of tribal almost. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I think you don't realize that really until you go somewhere else.
Rowing's a big thing though across the UK schools. Is that?
Yeah. Certainly for particularly for Oxford and Cambridge, that's a big deal. And I think, I think the connection points are just different, right? It's so it might not be through sports, but there are a lot of very active kind of student societies that have a really strong multi-generational connection. We have one thing at Imperial which is really cool is we have this motor club, and so we have a number of kind of heritage vehicles from Victorian times, basically, that and Edwardian times that people that students maintain, and it's kind of you don't have to have experience with mechanics in order to be part of the club, but a lot of the students learn how to maintain these vehicles, which are really difficult to keep on the road. And they trot them out for different university ceremonies and like graduation and all sorts of stuff. And there's a really strong alumni community around those heritage vehicles, and so it's kind of finding all those connection points that are not necessarily as automatic as sports, but yes, we have we experienced World Cup fever and the crushing semifinal defeat for England in the World Cup. But I was kind of following along on all the Imperial WhatsApp groups all over the world with people watching the World Cup together, which was cool.
Yeah, very cool. Ryan, let's bring it home.
Yeah, Nicole, bring us home on Friday Cheers. You know the drill. So do our listeners.
Yeah. So
I love it. It was just boom.
Yeah, my Friday Cheers this week is I just took I took a vacation week last week, and we went sailing in Croatia, which was really, really cool for a lot of reasons. But I decided to read the Odyssey while we were on the boat, and I've
through
it's probably my fourth or fifth time through the Odyssey because I did a minor in classics, and I just anyway. But I read the Emily Wilson translation, and there's been this like huge kerfuffle with between Emily Wilson and Christopher Nolan. She doesn't like the movie at all. She's a professor at University of Pennsylvania, and her translation, Christopher Nolan says that it was her translation that inspired him to make the film. And she hates the film, which is unfortunate, but her translation is really, really good. And if you have the chance to pick it up, it's very modern and very spare and very poetic. And I highly recommend reading it while floating around the Adriatic Sea.
Floating around the Adriatic Sea part sounds really good.
Sounds perfect.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Nicole, we miss you. Good to see you. Thank you for being on Alumless. Chris, good to see you, my friend. Have a great weekend, everybody. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for hanging in there late on a Friday and UK time.
Thanks, guys. It was so fun.
Take care. Thank you.
Bye.